स्टूडेंट्स, आज हम पढ़ेंगे लाइफ प्रोसेसेस के बारे में। जितने भी लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म हैं, जैसे कि प्लांट, एनिमल या बैक्टीरिया, अपने आप को सरवाइव करने के लिए कुछ प्रोसेस करते हैं, जैसे कि ब्रीदिंग मतलब सांस लेना, ग्रोथ, डाइजेशन या किसी स्टिमुलाई के अगेंस्ट कोई रिस्पॉन्स। जैसे कि आपको चोट लगता है तो आपको सडन रिस्पॉन्स देखने को मिलता है। ये सारे प्रोसेस हमारी बॉडी में हमेशा होते रहते हैं, चाहे वो दिन हो, रात हो, हम सो रहे हो, जग रहे हों या कुछ भी ना कर रहे हों। द प्रोसेसेस विच टुगेदर परफॉर्म द फंक्शन ऑफ मेंटेनेंस ऑफ लाइफ इज कॉल्ड लाइफ प्रोसेस। मेनली ये 4 टाइप्स में डिवाइडेड हैं। फर्स्ट वन न्यूट्रिशन, सेकेंड रेस्पिरेशन, थर्ड circulation or transportation, fourth excretion. In this chapter, we will study in detail about all these 4 processes. So first of all, we are going to start with nutrition. So what is nutrition? Nutrition is a process by which organism takes food and utilizes it. जैसे कोई ऑर्गेनिज्म अपना खाना कैसे लेता है और उसको यूटिलाइज कैसे करता है, इसी प्रोसेस को न्यूट्रिशन कहते हैं। दिस कैन बी डिवाइडेड इनटू 2 टाइप्स। फर्स्ट वन ऑटोट्रॉपिक मोड ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन, सेकेंड वन हेटरोट्रॉपिक मोड ऑफ न्यूट्रिशन। एग्जाम्पल ऑफ ऑटोट्रॉपिक इज प्लांट्स एंड हेटरोट्रॉपिक इज ऑल एनिमल्स एंड डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म। नाउ what is autotrophic nutrition? If an organism can nourish itself by making its own food using sunlight or chemical, such mode of nutrition is called autotrophic nutrition. It can be classified into 2 types. First one, photoautotrophs, and second one, chemoautotrophs. Means living organism which can synthesize their own food by utilizing sunlight or light energy is known as photoautotrophs. Example, plants. Plants prepare their food by utilizing sun energy in the process photosynthesis. Now, chemoautotrophs. Few bacteria uses chemical to derive energy and that is known as chemoautotrophs. Now we will study about another mode of nutrition, which is heterotrophic nutrition. It can be classified into 3 parts: holozoic nutrition, saprophytic nutrition, and parasitic nutrition. Holozoic nutrition is a type of nutrition in which organism takes food directly and then digest it and then absorb it and utilize for energy production. Example, humans. There are certain steps involved in holozoic nutrition. First one, digestion means intake of food. Digestion is the breakdown of food. Absorption, when the digested food get absorbed, and assimilation, the utilization of absorbed food, and excretion means removal of waste material or undigested material. Next one, saprophytic mode of nutrition. In this, organisms get their food from dead decaying organism. First of all, they break down the food material outside their body and then they absorb it. Example, mushroom, yeast and some bacteria. And the last one is parasitic nutrition. In this nutrition, the organism get their food from living organism, that is host, without killing them. The organism which is getting the nutrition is known as parasite and the organism from which the nutrition is taken is known as host. Example, leeches. Now we will study about one of the best example of autotrophic mode of nutrition, which is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process by which plants prepare their food by using carbon dioxide, water in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. The food is prepared in carbohydrate which is stored in form of starch and oxygen is released in this process. There are few raw materials for photosynthesis like chlorophyll, which is a green pigment present in plant which absorb the sunlight, water, carbon dioxide and sunlight. Now we will study the mechanism of photosynthesis. The chlorophyll, which is green pigment, absorb the sunlight. Then the sunlight is used to split the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is then used to reduce carbon dioxide into carbohydrate, which is typically glucose, and oxygen is released in the form of byproduct, which is utilized by other organisms in the process of respiration. Stomata. Stomata are the tiny pores present in the leaf through which the exchange of gases takes place. Each stomata has a pair of guard cell which controls the opening and closing of stomatal pores. When water enters the guard cell, it swells and the pores open. When the guard cell loses water, it shrinks and pores are closed. The main function of stomata is gaseous exchange, and it also plays a vital role in the process of transpiration. Now we will study about holozoic mode of nutrition. As I have told you earlier, holozoic mode of nutrition involves few steps, which is ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation and excretion. Whether it is unicellular organism or multicellular organism which is following holozoic nutrition will follow all these steps. Example, amoeba. Amoeba is a unicellular organism but follow all these steps. Here is the figure which depicts the different stages in nutrition of amoeba. So first of all, amoeba engulf the food particle using a finger-like projection known as pseudopodia, and this process is known as phagocytosis. After that, the engulfed food get enclosed in food vacuole. As the food vacuole passes through the cytoplasm, digestion, absorption and assimilation will take place. When the food vacuole open to outside, the egestion of undigested food takes place. Now we will study nutrition in human, which is a multicellular organism. Human digestive system is mainly composed of alimentary canal and associated glands. Alimentary canals start from the mouth and end with anus, whereas associated glands involve mainly liver, salivary glands and pancreas. Liver produces bile juice which helps in digestion of fat. Salivary gland produces amylase and lysozyme. Amylase help in breakdown of carbohydrate and lysozyme act as an antibacterial. And the pancreas secreted pancreatic juice which contain various enzymes which help in digestion of food. Now we will study the digestion of food in the human step by step. First of all, we will study the digestion of food takes place in mouth or buccal cavity. It involves teeth, tongue and saliva. Here, the food is broken down into smaller particles by teeth and then mixed with saliva from salivary glands. Saliva contains enzymes, salivary amylase, which converts starch into the sugar or monosaccharide, and lysozyme helps as antibacterial which kills the microbes. Now we will come to next part of the alimentary canal, which is esophagus. No digestion takes place in esophagus. It simply transfers the food from the pharynx to the stomach. Now next part is stomach. In a stomach, there is gastric glands which produce gastric juices which contain enzyme pepsin, mucus and hydrochloric acid. Pepsin break down the protein into peptones and proteases, whereas mucus protect the lining or the covering of stomach from the highly acidic condition. HCl provide the highly acidic condition and activates various type of enzymes for their action. After these process, the food is passed into the small intestine. Now we will study the digestion of food in small intestine. In the upper part of small intestine called duodenum, the food is mixed with the bile which is produced from the liver and then with pancreatic juice from the pancreas. Bile help in emulsification of fat and break down the fat into the smaller globules. Pancreatic juice contain various enzymes. Example, amylase help in digestion of carbohydrate, trypsin help in digestion of protein, lipase help in digestion of fat. In the small intestine, the wall of the small intestine produces intestinal juices. The enzymes of intestinal juices converts carbohydrate into glucose, fat into fatty acid and glycerol, and protein into amino acid. The walls of small intestine have several finger-like projections known as villi, which have blood vessels. It helps in increasing the surface area for the absorption of digested food. The digested food is absorbed by blood and transported to the cell in the body. The undigested food passed into the large intestine. In large intestine, there is absorption of water, some minerals and drugs. In the last part of the large intestine, which is rectum, temporary collection of waste takes place. In the last process, the excretion takes place, means removal of undigested waste material through the anus. Now we will study about respiration. Respiration is a process by which living organism utilizes the food to get energy, and energy is produced in form of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, or ADP, adenosine diphosphate, which is also known as energy currency of the cell. Mainly, respiration involves two processes. First is gaseous exchange, means intake of oxygen from the atmosphere and release of CO2, which in simple terms also known as breathing. Another one is breakdown of simple food in order to release energy inside the cell, known as cellular respiration. Respiration can be divided into two types, which is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. The respiration which takes place in presence of oxygen known as aerobic respiration, and in absence of oxygen, anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration takes place in mitochondria, whereas anaerobic respiration occur in cytoplasm. End product of aerobic respiration is carbon dioxide and water plus energy. In anaerobic condition, the alcohol or ethanol or lactic acid is produced. The energy released in aerobic condition is much more in comparison to anaerobic condition. Now we will study the breakdown of glucose by various pathways. First of all, the glucose is converted into pyruvate and energy in the cytoplasm in the presence of oxygen. Now, it can be divided into three types. First of all, in the absence of oxygen, which is anaerobic respiration. In this condition, the pyruvate is converted into ethanol plus carbon dioxide plus energy. In the next condition, when there is lack of oxygen, not totally the absence of oxygen, but lack of oxygen. In this condition, from the pyruvate, lactic acid and energy is produced. And the last one is when there is presence of oxygen. The pyruvate is converted into carbon dioxide, water and energy. Example of in the condition of absence of oxygen is yeast. In the lack of oxygen, muscle cell. For example, when we run fastly, we feel the pain in our muscles. This is due to the production of lactic acid. And in the presence of oxygen, it takes place in mitochondria. Now we will study the respiration in human. The main organ of the respiratory system are nostrils, nasal cavity, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and diaphragms. First of all, air enters to nostrils, then to nasal passage, then nasal cavity, then pharynx, larynx, and trachea. After that, the air enters to the main part, which is lungs. Then air enters to bronchi, then bronchioles, and then at last alveoli, and after that, due to diffusion, the oxygen is transferred to blood capillaries. Now we will study about the exact breathing mechanism. During inhalation and exhalation. During inhalation, the diaphragm contract and flatten, due to which the volume of chest cavity increases and lungs expands, due to which the volume of lungs increases and the air flows into the lungs. Whereas in exhalation, the exact opposite process takes place. In this condition, the diaphragm releases and become dome shape. The volume of chest cavity decreases, the lungs contracts, and air is forced out of the lungs. You can also see in this image the process explained in the previous slide. In this slide, we will study about the exchange of gases between alveoli, blood, and tissues. When we inhale, the air which is present in alveoli have higher concentration of oxygen, and the blood which is coming out from the other part of the body contains the deoxygenated blood. Means the concentration of oxygen is very less in comparison to the concentration of oxygen present in the alveoli, and the concentration of CO2 will be higher in the blood which is present in the capillaries, and concentration of carbon dioxide is less in the alveoli. And we know the process of diffusion. There is movement of particles from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. So, due to this condition, the air which is rich in oxygen that binds with hemoglobin in the RBC, and O2 is released in the blood vessels. In the next condition, the CO2 is released into the alveoli from the blood. Now, we will study about the third topic, which is transportation. The transportation in animals, also known as circulation, and it consists of two systems. First one, blood circulatory system, and second one, lymphatic system. And in transportation in plant occur in two ways: ascent of sap and translocation. The circulatory system in animals consists of mainly a heart, artery, vein, capillaries, blood, and lymph. Now we will study about the heart. In humans, the heart is four-chambered, two on the top and two on the bottom. The upper chamber, known as atria, and the lower chamber is known as ventricle. Since the ventricle pumps blood to the different organ, its walls are thicker than atria. The right and the left chamber are separated by septum. It prevents the mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. The atria and ventricle have wall between them to protect blood flowing backwards. Now we will study about blood. Blood is a fluid connective tissue. It consists of three components, which is blood cells, plasma, and the platelet, which is also a type of blood cell. Blood cell is divided into two types: red blood cells and white blood cells. Red blood cells are red due to the presence of pigment called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin in the RBC carry oxygen in the blood. White blood cell fight with the infection and protect us from the diseases. Now, platelet. Platelet are the tiny fragment of special cell formed in the bone marrow. They do not have nuclei. They help in coagulation of blood in cut or a wound. Plasma. Plasma is a colorless liquid that consists of 90% of water, and it contains the red blood cells, white blood cells and platelets. Now we will study about blood vessels. First of all, arteries. Artery carries oxygenated blood from the heart to the all part of the body. Second one is veins. These blood vessels carry deoxygenated blood from the body parts back to the heart. And the last one is capillaries. These are thin-walled, extremely narrow tubes which connect artery to the veins. Lymph. Lymph transports the digested food and drains excess fluid from the intercellular space back into the blood. It contains lymphocytes which kills the germs and protect the body. Now we will study the circulation of the blood. In humans, there is double circulation, means blood travels twice through the heart in one complete cycle of the body. Double circulation can be classified into two parts, which is pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation. In pulmonary circulation, the blood moves from heart to the lungs and then back to the heart. Whereas in systemic circulation, the blood moves from the heart to the rest of the body and back to the heart. Now we will study pulmonary circulation in detail. The blood circulation starts from the right atrium to the left atrium in this pathway. First of all, the pulmonary artery collects the blood from the right ventricle and carries to the lungs for the oxygenation. Once after the purification process, the oxygenated blood is pumped back to the left atrium and the pulmonary vein, which is carried to the left ventricle. The left ventricle pumps the oxygenated blood to the aorta for systemic circulation. In systemic circulation, carries oxygenated blood from the left ventricle to the tissues capillaries. The oxygen-rich blood is transferred to the aorta for circulating into the various parts of the body. Later, the veins and the venules collect the deoxygenated blood, which is rich in carbon dioxide from the various parts of the body. After that, the deoxygenated blood is pumped into the superior vena cava and then to the right atrium. Once after receiving the deoxygenated blood, the right atrium carries blood to the right ventricle for pulmonary circulation, and in this way the whole circulation process of the blood takes place. Now we will study the transportation in plant. First of all, transportation of water and mineral. Transportation of water and minerals takes place with the xylem. The movement of water is unidirectional. It flows from downward to upward direction. Whereas transportation of food takes place in phloem tissue. It can be bidirectional or multidirectional. Now, transpiration. Transpiration is a process of removal of excess water in form of water vapor from the leaf of the plants. Excretion. Excretion is a process by which the waste product produced during the metabolic activity is removed from the body. In unicellular organism, the waste product are removed by the process of diffusion. In multicellular organism, the waste product are removed through specialized organ. Excretion in humans. The excretory system consist of pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, urinary bladder, and urethra. Each kidney has number of excretory units called nephrons. Nephron. Nephron is the functional and the basic unit of excretory system. Each nephron has a cup-like structure called Bowman's capsule, which contains a bundle of capillaries called glomerulus. The Bowman's capsule leads into the tubular structure which join in the collecting duct. The renal artery brings the nitrogenous base like ammonia, urea, uric acid along with the excess water, salt, etc. into the nephron. It filters the nitrogenous waste, water and the salt which passes through the tubular structure into the collecting duct. The waste then passes through the ureters into the urinary bladder and then sent out through the urethra as a urine. Excretion in plant. It can take place in various forms. First, gaseous waste are expelled from the stomata. Second, water vapor from the leaf through the process of transpiration. Solid waste can also be excreted out and stored in the plant body through shedding of leaves, peeling of bark, or the falling of fruit. Gums and resins excreted from the lenticels in the barks is also a type of excretion in plant. Thank you for listening me, and please do like, share and subscribe my channel.